Bro, listen to this.
through? I mean, we could always go stand over there.
That's fine. If you would like to do opening remarks at the podium, I am happy to.
Whatever you want to do.
Supposed to be standing in lectern zone.
Okay. I'm sorry. I did not understand that.
Yeah.
That piece.
Yeah. James Grumall did.
Okay. Well, James Grimald did not
Yeah.
relay that information. We do have 1 minute.
Well, it's whatever you want to do. You can do it from here.
Whatever you want to do.
But
I
if-
think we should do the same.
Yes.
So if we're going to stand up, we all both stand up.
And that takes too much time going back and forth. Yeah. But
Yes, we'll
can
get
we do lecterns? Yeah.
All right. Excuse me. Good evening.
I got this in case somebody asked me about my legislation and then my little intro.
You know, I was going to put this on the lectern.
Yeah, of course. Oh, well. I guess we're going to find out if this needs to move closer or not.
I can't hear you. We can take the mics off and hold them.
Okay, I don't know if I like
Good evening.
Why don't we do this?
Thank you for joining us this evening for what is, I'm sure, a spirited but civil debate between incumbent Senator Patricia Rucker and challenging candidate John Doyle. Both candidates are running for the West Virginia State Senate District 16 seat, and we appreciate that Senator Rucker and Mr. Doyle chose to partner with the Stubblefield Institute and the West Virginia Radio Corporation to bring this debate to you tonight. My name is Ashley Hurst. I am the Executive Director of the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications, which is located right here at Shepherd University. We are airing live from the Byrd Center at Shepherd University, and you can also hear this program on WEPM, WCST, or stream it live on the Stubblefield Institute's YouTube channel. This event is part of the Year of Civility, which is a collaboration between Shepherd University and the Stubblefield Institute that focuses on civil discussion and action and bringing together diverse ideas and addressing complex issues. As part of the Year of Civility, we are pleased to offer opportunities such as these to our students and our community, and we are especially pleased to see many students with us this evening. As we are emphasizing civility and civil discourse throughout this year, we do have a few ground rules for this evening. After each of the candidates have had the opportunity to give an opening statement, we will take questions from our in-person audience. If you should have a question, please raise your hand and I will get to you in the order that I see hands raised. As we are live on the radio, please keep in mind FCC guidelines and avoid using profanity in your questions. Because time is limited, we also ask that you get right to your question and avoid lengthy explanations so that our candidates have time to answer as many questions as possible. As both Senator Rucker and Mr. Doyle have publicly committed to this being a civil event, the most common question we've received is whether questions can be both critical of one of the candidates and still be civil. The answer to that question is yes. Both of these candidates have established platforms and voting records. Questions related to their public service, whether it be future plans or past legislation on which they've acted, are fair game. Personal attacks on their character or name calling, however, are not acceptable. And isn't it sad that I have to say that? Our question and answer time will wrap up around 8:20, and at that time, each of the candidates will have a few minutes to give a closing statement before I wrap up the program. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. Senator Rucker will have your opening statement.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that the folks in the back will let me know if they can hear me. Can you all hear me? Good. Okay. Thank you so much. So both John and I have agreed to just give a brief opening statement. So I will just briefly, for those who may not know, give a little background on myself. I am a first-generation immigrant from Venezuela who came to the United States of America when I was 6 years old. I am very proud to have made West Virginia my home since the year 2000. I am been married for 28 years, have 5 children, and now 1 grandson, which I'm so excited about. And I have been honored to be your state senator for 8 years now. So I am running for re-election. Just to give you a brief idea of why I ran for office and what my goals were when I ran, I will tell you that it was my intent to have a representative representing me that would be responsive, that would answer my emails and my questions, who would show up when needed at an event or some public discourse. And that is one of the things I have tried to do. It has been my goal to respond to every constituent email or call or message, or even when they stop me at Aldi's or Walmart. Many of you know me that I try to respond to all of you as quickly as possible. I publish my cell phone. I put it on all my campaign material on my website. I want to be available to you and have made that part of why I am serving. I also wanted a representative who would fight for the 16th district. We are the district furthest away from Charleston, and I really felt like we were being neglected and we were not getting our voice heard. Although John has worked at that for many years, and he was my delegate for many years, he could tell you the difficulty it is in getting folks to understand the particular complexity of our area. And so I've been trying to be that voice for you. And in the committees where I serve, I am thinking of you when I am there, fighting for things for the Eastern Panhandle. I also have tried to improve education. Education, I believe, is the key component to improving West Virginia for the future, and that has always been my passion. And I, of course, strive to support and protect families in our state. Some of the accomplishments I've done, just to give some brief idea, I worked very hard to protect our farms. I was the lead sponsor of agritourism legislation. I helped make the farmers markets much easier to do in West Virginia. I passed the cottage food industry bill, which helps folks be able to start their cottage food creation in their home kitchens, so to see whether or not there's a market, and then they can invest in a commercial kitchen. So one of the things that makes me very proud is companies like Bolivar Bread Company would have never started up if we had not passed that legislation. I have pushed for school reform. I've made school safety improvements. I've supported free expression in our campuses, both college and K-12. I passed West Virginia Invests, which helps our students go to basically a CTC like Blue Ridge. And if you're studying something that we need in the state of West Virginia, we will pay your tuition. I have pushed for price transparency when it comes to going to the hospital or to the clinics. I helped get past dental coverage for adults on Medicaid. I have helped increase our workforce for nursing and medical needs that is such desperate need. I created several scholarships to get more nurses, more school counselors, and more teachers in the state. I've reduced regulations on small businesses, and I'll just stop there. So just to give you an overview, I'm always looking for more ways to improve education and to bring more jobs and to protect small businesses and our farms. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm John Doyle. I served for 26 years in the House of Delegates, representing Jefferson County. During that time, I was the lead sponsor of the bill that created our community college system here. I was also the lead sponsor in the House of the bill that created the Farmland Protection Program. It was the Senate bill that passed, but I was the lead sponsor on the House side. I worked with the State Board of Education, and at times it was like jawboning them to require civics for graduation from high school. When I graduated from high school, from Charlestown High School, we had to have civics in the 9th grade and a more intense course, Problems of Democracy, in the 12th grade. I'd like to see us go back to that, but at the very least, after about 30 years of not requiring civics at all, we got it. I stand for clean air and clean water. I stand for good public schools, emphasis on the public, and I want to restore reproductive freedom for the women of West Virginia. I also stand for something called your right to repair. And I'm going to take a sentence or two to explain that. When you buy a product, whether it's a car or a computer or a refrigerator or a tractor or whatever, the manufacturer is permitted in almost every state in the union, including ours, to retain as proprietary the information needed to fix it. So even if you know how to fix it yourself, you can't do it because the manufacturer won't let you. Now, certainly if it's still under warranty, you're going to go back to the manufacturer. But once it's beyond warranty, you ought to be able to fix it yourself. Or if you have a friendly neighborhood repair person that knows how to fix it, you should be able to take that information and go to them and have it fix it. The state of Massachusetts 2 years ago passed such a law mandating that when you buy a product, the manufacturer must give you that coded information. Delegate Kayla Young from Charleston for the last 2 years has introduced a bill that would do this for agricultural equipment. And it is it's a crisis when it comes to farm equipment. If I'm elected, the bill I would sponsor, would cover every product. So thank you very much for coming, and I'm eager to take your, let me say this. I have great respect for Senator Rucker. I regard her as a friend. She's a delightful person, and she is scrupulously honest, and she's a conscientious public servant. You will see that we disagree on some issues, but that's the only thing we disagree on.
Thank you, John. And I agree about you, of course.
All right. Mr. Doyle, would you like to select the first question from the
Yes,
audience?
we are going to alternate selecting people to ask questions. So hands, let me see hands. Right down front. Oh, and when you raise your hand, can you raise it as high as you can? I might not see it if you're just like this.
And when you
Go ahead.
when you ask your question, if you can please state your name and where you're from, and then ask your question.
My name is Betty DeHaven. I'm from Berkeley County, Martinsburg. And my question is, do you believe in abortion? And this is follows. If so, up to what month or week should an abortion be done?
So the question is, do you believe in abortion? And if so, to what week or month do you think an abortion should be able to be done?
My personal view is that it should be the woman who makes that decision. Now, we do need some rules. I understand that. And one of the points of departure when states decide what the rules ought to be are, shall we have a ban with some exceptions, or shall it be permitted with some restrictions? And I come down in the latter category. I think Roe versus Wade had it right. And West Virginia now has a complete ban on abortion with a couple of exceptions that I think are pretty narrow. Actually, 3 exceptions, 2 of which I think are very, very narrow exceptions for rape and incest. So that's when I say I want to restore reproductive freedom, I think we should repeal that ban and end up with rules very much similar to what the country had when Roe versus Wade was in effect.
Okay, and thank you for that question. This is one of the areas in which I don't agree with John. Most people know I am very pro-life. I believe that all human life is precious. And that same desire and belief that I have that life is precious feeds the reasons for why I fight so hard to help the poor, the impoverished, the senior citizens, those who are struggling in our state. I fight for the rights of individuals, whether they be in jail, whether they are in their homes, to protect themselves and to be treated humanely. And it's because I believe every human life is precious. And to me, that doesn't matter what age or how small you are. It is something that it is inherent. I am definitely grateful that in this state we are protecting life, and we're doing everything we can possible to help women who might be pregnant, might need support. We put more funding for pregnancy centers. We have fought, and I can tell you, as I forgot to mention, I am the co-chair of the Women's Caucus for the legislature, and one of the things that we champion, it is a bipartisan caucus of all women legislators in the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat, and we've taken on the issues of rape and care for women who have been abused, and also maternal health and safety. These are all areas in which we can definitely improve, and we have been fighting and working together in a bipartisan manner in order to find better support for them.
Your turn to select.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Thanks for letting me know. Sorry.
Thank you.
Senator Rucker, would you like to select a
Sure.
audience member for a question?
Okay, how about this lady over here in the
And
blue?
let me get to you before you ask your question.
Hi, my name is Tina Barton, and I live in Shepherdstown. You both said that said that you were very supportive of education, and I'm very much involved with the library, and wondering how we only have 3 libraries in Jefferson County, and I'm wondering how each one of you would address that issue at the Senate, if you would fight for more funding, and how you would do that to get us more libraries. Our local library, our new library, has shown just how much people need the libraries and are using it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for any work you do with our library. I love our public libraries. Many of you know I homeschooled my children, and if it hadn't been for the local public library in Harpers Ferry, I would have had a really tough time because we didn't have internet service at our house on the mountains. So very grateful for what libraries do. And within the senatorial district, the 16th senatorial district, there's actually 5 libraries, just so you know. And I advocate for all public libraries. Actually, I've been working to try to get a steady funding source for libraries. So right now, for those who don't know, it's basically the libraries get a little bit of money from school levies when they pass. They get a little bit of money from the county or the city. They can choose to give some money, but it's never steady and it's never promised. So try to imagine running any kind of business and you never know that you have a set amount of money. It's impossible. So obviously, you know, they can accept donations, but they're always struggling. And then there's no set cost to help them with the repair, the facilities, the infrastructure of the library. So we worked with, actually there's like a librarian association group, to try to craft legislation. It failed to pass several years in a row. Then 2 years ago, we transferred the authority over the public libraries to the Arts and Culture Secretary. Randall Reed Smith is the current secretary, with the hope that you would have someone who would be advocating and being a spokesperson, because it is really difficult you know, for us to get the amount of recognition that we need to get for libraries when they don't have a Department of Education like our public schools do. So we did pass that, and it has been 2 years. He has been advocating for more money. This past legislative session was the first time that we put a set amount of money to help libraries with their facilities. He got about $400,000, which is only scratching the surface, of course. But I'm hoping that we will be able to continue to increase that. I definitely believe that just like our public schools, there needs to be a steady funding source.
I agree with that. The 26 years I was in the House of Delegates, 19 of them I was on the Finance Committee. And every one of those years, I argued strongly for greater funding for libraries. Some years with success. Not every year, but some years. And I will do that again. Yes. My turn. Hands right down here.
I'm Judith Leitner. I live here in Shepherdstown. My question is, there are many, many families, and I have a daughter and her husband who are desiring to adopt. And it's extremely expensive, and it takes a long, long time. So my question is, how would you both feel on supporting an issue or whatever it would take to form numerous facilities in West Virginia that would support the mother-to-be and carry her through the pregnancy, educate her, supply her needs, and this would be through the state. But then the child would be born, and then she would have a choice to make on whether to keep the child or allow another family to adopt it. Because we are losing our population in children with abortion, but also we have so many families that want to adopt children and don't have $15,000 and $20,000 and can't wait for 6 years. So
I'm not sure how to answer your question. It's because I'm not sure I understand it. It sounds like you're saying, you're asking me, would I support greater public funding to help women who are pregnant up through the pregnancy and during early childhood? Is that right? Was that your question? Yes, I would. Yeah.
Okay, well, I definitely agree. We are doing that with the pregnancy centers that we are funding, and that includes support for women. We also increase in our Medicaid funding 12 months of care. So it's not just 9 months. We increased it to 12 months. So she gets help throughout the entire pregnancy and then afterwards too. And I would definitely support greater support. I do want to let you know there are facilities in the state to help with adoption, but you're right, it is expensive. These are all private facilities, and it does, I'm not really certain why it is so expensive. I think it's the legal considerations, the fact that you must have a lawyer involved in these type of things, but if there was a way to make it more affordable, I would definitely support that. We always want to make certain, though, that we have proper procedures in place to make certain family would be a good home for that child, and that also that the mother that is giving up her child gets support and is not pressured. Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead.
My name's Graham Scott. I live in Charlestown, West Virginia, and I'm a graduate of Shepherd University. So public higher education institutions like Shepherd throughout the state are financially stressed in the post-COVID era, and with previous cuts from the state budget to higher education. So my question is, would you support increasing levels of higher education funding to Shepherd and other institutions across the state? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And just so you know, we haven't made cuts in many years, but there are different things that we emphasize at certain years than others. This last year, we put in a very substantial amount of money just to help with, again, talking about facilities and infrastructure. We finally put a sizable chunk of money to help our state public institutions of higher education with their infrastructure needs. We have funded it about half of the list. We still need to do it again to really take care of all of that. And in terms of getting greater funding, absolutely. And I could tell you I've been a huge fan of Shepherd and done everything I could. I helped pass a bill that gave them a little bit of greater flexibility and I guess you'd say taking some of the regulations that HEPC imposed off of their backs if they met certain criteria, and Shepherd did. So they were able to have a lot more flexibility. And that's part of my effort to try to decentralize. And I know John also supports just getting our institutions, giving them the ability to do what they think is best for themselves instead of having a state policy group making all the decisions. But I do love our higher ed institutions, and we should be very proud of the work that Shepherd and all of our public higher ed institutions are doing in the state.
I disagree with Senator Rucker that there haven't been cuts. It's a matter of definition. I think there have been significant cuts in higher education, public education, other areas of state because we haven't allowed the funding to increase to match inflation. And that is a large part of why our colleges and universities are struggling. And in particularly in Shepherd's case, because historically, going back 30, 40 years, the funding there was no such thing as a funding formula. You got the same amount of money from the state that you'd gotten 30 years ago. So a school like Shepherd, which has seen significant increases in enrollment, never got extra money for that enrollment. The public schools did, but Shepherd never got that. There are a couple of other schools in the state that saw enrollment increases that did not get the matching increase in dollars per student. I do commend the legislature. A couple of years ago, they finally passed a funding formula bill, and I think it's a good formula. Problem is, they've gone 2 years in a row and haven't put any money in it. If they put real money into that funding formula, Shepherd will see a real increase and be able to do some of the things that everybody here at Shepherd thinks Shepherd needs to do.
Well,
Right.
I just want to disagree. So you may remember that we did actually increase the funding for Shepherd. That was about 3 years ago. They got a substantial bump. And part of that was because, fortunately, for the Eastern Panhandle, many more of the Eastern Panhandle legislators were in positions of leadership. So that helped greatly. But then when it came to the funding formula, the money is there. So it's not that we have to put money in. We set up a formula so that higher ed institutions that meet the criteria will get a certain amount of funding for that student, just like we do with public education. And then on top of that, there's extra money for certain things like research or particular projects that they want to take on. So Shepherd actually, through that funding formula, which is only now being fully implemented, should have gotten an increase, and the governor, unfortunately, of the state of West Virginia decided to veto that. But that was not the legislature, so I just want to make sure everyone understands, and we will obviously be advocating to fix that. That's actually one of the things that a lot of us are pushing to add to the special session call that has been called, and we have asked the governor, why isn't this on that call?
Okay. I was there 3 years ago in the House when we passed that increase, and I didn't think it was very much. But it certainly didn't get anywhere near what was needed. I agree with you. The legislature did put some extra money in it this year, and Governor Jim Justice, in his wisdom, killed it. So you all can evaluate that as you will. I do think higher ed needs more money in general, and Shepherd in particular needs more money. Is it my turn? Or was it your turn?
I think it was.
My turn.
Okay.
Somebody in the back. Yes, right back there. Thank you.
My name is Hallie Meyer. I live in Shepherdstown, and I'm a Shepherd student. My question is for the both of you. Do you guys support the restriction of race and gender discussion and education in the public school system?
Can you repeat that?
Yes. Do you support the restriction of race and gender discussion and education in the public school system?
No.
Yes, and I will tell you why. When it comes to public education, if we were doing a fantastic and wonderful job of having those kids be able to graduate, being able to read, write, and speak well, like you do, it would be wonderful to add more things to what teachers need to do. But I really would like them to focus on reading, writing, arithmetic, and being able to speak well, as I think those are the key components that you need in order to be successful in college and in life.
Your turn to select someone.
Okay, lady in the back? We're making Ashley walk all over.
Yes, I had a question about a recent initiative that I heard in the legislature to allow.
Could you speak a little louder?
I recently heard about legislation to allow nuclear waste to be brought into the state for disposal. And I was wondering what your stance is on opposing bringing nuclear waste into the state.
I guess I'll start off
Yeah.
with that. So I saw that bill for the very first time yesterday when we were in this special session call that we had to go to Charleston for. I'd never seen that bill previous to that. Supposedly, that bill does not bring more waste. It's about who gets to regulate and make certain that the waste is properly disposed of. Again, I'm telling you supposedly because it's a complicated bill, and I only just saw it yesterday. I can't promise that I know everything that's in the bill. But the bill seems to be giving the authority to the Department of Health, which already handles radiation medical waste whenever that occurs, more authority to handle whenever there's any type of radiation, radioactive waste in the state. And it's part of a model legislation that the National Radiation, NRSC, I think, is asking states to pass. So a lot of it, the language comes from the feds. I will tell you, my personal opinion, no, I do not want to see more nuclear waste coming to the state.
I don't want to see nuclear waste in the state either, but I agree with Senator Rucker on this. I don't think that bill is specifically about that. There are already about 35 states that have entered into compacts with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission so that states have enhanced regulatory authority over what happens within their boundaries as opposed to federal regulatory authority. This is similar to the way that the Department of Environmental Protection works when it comes to various areas of environmental protection. States, if they demonstrate that they're capable of handling it, are permitted to have more local regulation. I need to see what's in that bill. I talked to a couple of my friends who were in the legislature and who voted against it, and their reasons were primarily, we don't really know how this is going to play out, so we just need to know a lot more about it before we evaluate it. And I think, it sounds like Senator Rucker agrees with me on this, this is not something that should be sprung in a 2 or 3 day special session. I think this needs to be held for the regular session so it can go through the committee process, be hashed out, have people in, ask them questions so we have a much better idea of what this all means.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
My turn. Right here.
So my name is James Walsh. I'm a lifetime resident of Charlestown, West Virginia. My question is on the topic of solar. And industrial scale solar is a huge issue in Jefferson County at this moment. And my question revolves not around industrial scale, but community solar. And it is my understanding that community solar is not on the table because of red tape in Charleston. Community solar benefits the community that builds these systems. And what is your thought on community solar, and what would you do to bring this option to the table for West Virginia?
I strongly support community solar. It is very, very different from this industrial grade solar that we're seeing in Jefferson County right now. I think there are major problems with that, and I think there needs to be much stronger local regulation on those things. I don't think we can ban them, but I do think we could do a much better job of zoning them and regulating them. For community solar, that is a really good thing in the states that have had it. I think that the opposition to community solar comes primarily from the regulated monopolies that give us our electricity, like Potomac Edison, and also from the Public Service Commission, which, in my opinion, usually just simply sides with these monopolies with whatever they want. And that's one of the reasons, incidentally, and I thank you for the question, because one of the things that I'm promoting in my campaign, which I apologize, I forgot about in my opening remarks, I think we should have an elected Public Service Commission. Presently, the Public Service Commission is appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the state Senate. There are 3 members, they serve 6-year terms, and they're staggered. And the history of that commission is when citizens come and say, hey, you're letting our rates get too high, and then the companies come in and say, we need higher rates, they just say to the companies, whatever you want. I think if we had an elected Public Service Commission, it would be a very different story.
I haven't heard that proposal yet, John, so that's good to know.
Well, maybe I should do a better job of letting people know, including you.
Yeah, I am your senator. So just so you know, I actually was a sponsor of the community solar bill that got brought forth, and am in support of community solar when it is just folks in the community who would like to band together to support having more solar on top of a library, for example, and make that possible. I think that that's great. I do not want to see it being forced. I do not want to see the government, pushing for it, but absolutely should it be allowed? Yes. And just to add to what John said, because what he said was completely correct, I do think most of the opposition comes from the electric companies, but that opposition, so folks know, the way that they explain it in the committees is, they have to spend the money to run the poles and to run the lines. And, we all benefit from that. It's why we have electricity. And what they don't want is that those solars don't pay their fair share for the cost of keeping those lines going. Because, of course, if those lines aren't maintained, that community solar isn't really helping the community. So I think that's where it breaks down, and I think we can work that out. We came very close in this last session. I believe it made it through one committee and didn't make it through the second. But just so you know, I'm in supportive, and definitely I think we can find a way.
Your turn.
Okay, lady in the back there. Yep, right here. I just saw you first.
Hi. I had a question about your position on guns, on especially AR-15 rifles, and also in terms of the number of suicides in the state with guns. So what is your position on guns?
Well, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment right to defend oneself, and I don't believe the government should be interfering with your right. I will tell you that I have been a lead sponsor in almost all the legislation that has increased our ability to protect ourselves. Having said that, it's up to an individual what it is and how it is that they want to fulfill that obligation. So I'm not pushing for people to get AR-15s, but I'm also do not want the government to start telling people what they can and cannot get.
I was a rifle platoon leader in the Army. This is the pin I wear is the combat infantry badge. I carried an M16, which is the military was the military version of the AR-15. I know what it can do, and I do not think that it should be a civilian weapon. I don't mind if people have it for target practice and that sort of thing. I have been hesitant to come out in favor of banning assault weapons like the AR-15 and the M16. I am in favor of stronger background checks, and I am in favor of red flag laws. In fact, 2 or 3 years ago, I actually introduced a red flag law bill. It didn't get anywhere, but I do think we need stronger regulation. I, too, strongly support the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to keep and bear arms. But with every right in the Constitution is subject to reasonable regulation. Freedom of speech does not give you right to sit here and yell fire right now if there isn't a fire. Every right is subject to reasonable regulation. My turn. Way in the back, in the middle.
What measures will you support to address the affordable housing crisis, ensuring that families, recent graduates, seniors, and low-income residents are not priced out of their communities?
That's a toughie. This is a national problem, and it is a particular problem in West Virginia here, in Charleston, in Huntington, and in Morgantown. I think about the only thing you could do is figure out a way to have some subsidies for people to construct low-income housing. And you have to be careful when you talk about low-income housing, affordable housing. Just exactly what does that mean? You know, I don't want to put people in slums. The housing that we construct needs to be built to code, built to standard, so that it is the type of housing that any of us would be willing to live in. I think that I really think this is an issue that has to be solved on a national basis.
And I have to agree. I think it would be very complicated to try to address it on a state basis. Just so you know, I participate in conversations that are occurring about the housing crisis. We definitely, so there is some already subsidized housing in Jefferson and Berkeley County. It's not enough, clearly. And it is meant more for the older population, not necessarily for younger people. I feel that pain. I have young adult children who cannot move out of the home because they cannot afford a home in the local area. But you have to be very careful if you want to introduce any kind of government control for pricing. I don't think that's a solution. And part of the reason we're having that housing issue here is that we have a lot of folks wanting to move in. In most of the state of West Virginia, they would love to see that increase in population that we're facing here. And so having a statewide solution is not going to work in something like this, but being able to work together to try to find local ways to help folks, and that is happening right now. And like I said, I'm part of that conversation, but it is a very tricky and complicated issue. But thank you for raising it.
Yes, and if I could follow up, I do know that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, McDowell County, and I think it might have come from some kind of a grant, the state set up housing for teachers. They built a housing complex just for teachers in McDowell County because McDowell County was having great difficulty getting teachers to teach there because they didn't want to live there. And it was too far to drive to teach there from places that were comfortable to live in. So that conceivably could be a model we could look at, but I'm not prepared to say that I'm sure it would work. Maybe we should look at it, but I'm...
and the higher cost of land that we have here in our area, it makes it so difficult because
right.
It will cost so much exponentially more to do anything like that here.
Right.
And we have a clarifying question.
Oh, okay.
So this is more of a yes or no. Would you back policies to incentivize affordable housing? That being said, workforce development or with the developers themselves to include affordable housing in their development plans?
Yes.
It depends on the policy. You know, I have to look at the policy and see if I look at it and it looks workable to me. The answer is yes, but it's the old saw about the devil being in the details. You know, I in the past have voted for things that I thought would work that didn't work, that actually made the problem worse in different areas of policy. Hey, I've made mistakes, and so I really want to be careful about that.
Well, I just have to say, like, good ideas. I'll take good ideas from anyone and anywhere.
Yeah. Your turn.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
My name's Fred DeLauro. I'm a physician here in Shepherdstown. Senator Rucker, I understand you have introduced and supported bills to eliminate universal vaccination in children in West Virginia. I think that this overwhelming scientific evidence supports the fact that vaccination in children decreases infectious diseases like measles and whooping cough, and decreases deaths in children. I guess I'm wondering what your rationale is for supporting a bill that potentially could cost the lives of West Virginia children.
Well, let's first make sure we're clarifying. I did not introduce any legislation to eliminate universal vaccination. I introduced legislation to eliminate the requirement, the mandatory requirement that we currently have for a slew of vaccinations that takes away a parent's right to determine whether this is the right thing for their child. And I believe a parent should have that ultimate decision. Most states, including all of our surrounding states, allow for religious exemptions. We do not allow for that in the state of West Virginia. Some states allow for philosophical exemptions. We do not allow for that in the state of West Virginia. So in the state of West Virginia, you can only get an exemption to a mandatory vaccination if you have already medically had an adverse reaction to a vaccine, and then we only give you an exemption to that one and only that one vaccine. So you're asking a parent whose child has had an adverse reaction to continue to vaccinate their child with other vaccines that most of them have similar ingredients, and you're also asking them to continue to risk their other children because that other children haven't suffered the adverse reaction yet. So this is one of the many ways in which I think government should not have a one-size-fits-all. Every single family has unique situations and concerns, and I want to trust the parents to make the decision that's best for their particular family. They're taking on all the risk of that child having a severe adverse reaction, and they're going to be taking care of that child. We, the state, should not be forcing it upon them. I also will tell you that when it comes to those medical decisions, there are a lot of medical decisions that we don't dictate to someone, you must have this treatment. You must take this medicine for that disease. We let the person decide for themselves. I don't see why it's any different when it comes to vaccinations.
I think differently than Senator Rucker about this issue. I do believe that we should continue to require vaccination. When you have your child vaccinated, you're not only protecting your child, you're protecting other children, the rest of society. That is the purpose of vaccination, and I think it works well. I got COVID back in the middle of August. I've had all my shots. I barely knew I had it, only because somebody said, maybe you should take the test, and I did, and I've got it. It was just so mild, and I believe it was because I'd had all my vaccinations. And for that reason, I stayed at home, but my suspicion is I would not have been nearly as what is the word I'm looking for? As what? Contagious. Thank you. I was looking for that word. I believe I would not have been nearly as contagious to the public in that situation had I not taken the vaccine and been in terrible shape. Yeah, it is the purpose of one of the fundamental purposes of government is to protect the health and safety of the public. And that is why I think we need to continue to require vaccination.
So as a follow-up, I do want to point out to you that there are a lot of things that Big Pharma has done that have turned out to not be so great for the public. There has been drugs that have been introduced, and then we find out 4 or 5 years later, oh, well, actually, no, there's some concerns and dangers. If there are individuals who have those concerns about a vaccination or that has come out, and they prefer to not have it, I think it just should be up to them. And I also want to point out to you that we're not talking about eliminating vaccines. We're not eliminating them. We're giving folks the opportunity and the decision making to decide whether or not this is the path they want to take. If you are vaccinated, you are protected, so you don't need to be worried about the person who is not. And when we go to the movie theaters and we go to schools, we don't know if the person next to us is vaccinated. When you go to Walmart, you have no idea if the person next to you is vaccinated. And in our public schools, we mandate it for the students. We don't mandate it for the adults. They do not have to have those vaccine boosters. There is no one checking on them. So if your policy is you want to make certain everyone has these vaccines so we're all protected, you would have to start mandating it to everyone, I believe, to be consistent.
Now, it's not all one or the other. I think the system we have now is about what we should have. I think we require about what we should have. You are right. Big Pharma on occasion makes mistakes. I still think that on balance, we're better off requiring children to be vaccinated. And I think we're all better off if most adults decide to go get themselves vaccinated.
And that's a great personal decision to have. Again, my children were vaccinated, but I just want to point out that I don't believe we should not be mandating it. And religious exemptions especially, I think, are protected by the Constitution of the United States.
What's religious about vaccination?
Well,
What's religious about vaccination? I don't understand where that comes from.
If we're going to allow that question, you should make him ask it in the.
yeah.
What's the religious objection to vaccinations?
So a lot of vaccinations, they use aborted fetal cells in the making and creation of it and in the duplicating of it. And some folks don't like that. So I don't think we should be forcing it on them.
Yeah, there are some religions that object to some vaccinations for various reasons. I'm sympathetic to that, but I'm more sympathetic to the need to protect the public. So is it my turn or?
Your turn.
My turn to pick some. Back right there. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm Marty Amerikaner. I live here in Shepherdstown. In your opening statements, you both voiced support for improving, I think might have been at least one of your words, public education in the state. And neither one of you got very specific about what that means. I wonder if you could talk a bit about the weeds of that suggestion. How do you anticipate improving public public education, and in what ways might you be differing on that that kind of idea?
First of all, West Virginia has the lowest paid school teachers of all the 50 states. And that is part of our problem. We have very good people that go into teaching, they stay a few years, and in the central part of the state, they find something else to do. Over here, they go teach in Virginia or Maryland. We have to staunch the flow. And I do think that in the last few years, the legislature sometimes takes credit for giving a 5% raise here, a 5% raise there. We're still dead last. Every time we give a 5% raise, all the other states give 7, 8, 10% raises. And so they keep jumping ahead of us. I think we need to give a 15% across the board raise to all public school teachers. And then on top of that, we need to get locality pay to the equivalent of about 10%. Now, locality pay has been very, very difficult to pass because most of the rest of the state sees it as letting our school teachers live in palaces over here. They really don't understand how much more housing costs over here. I believe that we now have a critical mass representing the Eastern Panhandle. Just after this, not this past election, but the one before, we now have more than 10% of the representation in each house of the legislature. And if our delegation over here, Democrat, Republican, doesn't make any difference, if we all get together and say to the rest of the state, listen, these things you want for your areas will help you, but this is our price. We have to have this. And I think the proposal I have is to have a housing allowance based on simply those 27 counties that are above the statewide average in housing costs. So you give, say, a 1 or 2% to the county that's number 26. You give maybe a 5% to the county that's number 20. each degree to which you are above the statewide average, you get a little bit more in housing costs. You don't call it salary. You don't let it count it in the salary. One of the objections I've heard is, well, if we give them all that in salary, they'll have that much more money to move to Florida when they retire. Don't let it count toward salary. Let it count directly toward housing. Those are my ideas about how to improve it.
So locality pay is one of the things that I've always agreed with John on when he was in the House of Delegates and he was part of the majority party. He tried and it didn't work. I've been trying for that for the last 8 years. I did actually put language in the education reform bill that I passed in 2019 that allows in areas of high turnover for the salaries to be more than what the state sets for them. But as you know, it's inflation, it is demand for teachers. We have seen a national decline in number of people going into the teaching profession. So in a true free market, the salaries would be increasing at a much higher rate if it was truly a free market. The problem is we put them into the state code where you have to have votes and you have to take it out of the taxpayers' pockets, and so that slows the things down. I would love to see more classic competitive wages because I think it would fix the problem of locality pay and also what we should be paying teachers. In terms of how to actually improve public education, I will tell you that most of the teachers in the state of West Virginia have class sizes. The average class size is 11. Now, obviously, not the case in the Eastern Panhandle. And this is one of the many reasons for why a one-size-fits-all is just not the right way to handle things, because we have a very different situation here than in most of the area of the state. So when we try to pass legislation in the state that affects all the public schools, it's not really doing justice to the particular needs we need here. So this is one of the reasons why I have fought for more local control. And in that same education reform bill, we gave the county school boards, for the first time, substantial control over how to run the schools in their counties and wrestled a lot of that power away from the State Board of Education. It's not enough, but it is definitely a step towards that direction. So I think more local control is part of the solution. We need better principals and leadership folks in the schools. So if you look at all of the stories of failing schools that have really turned around and have really improved dramatically, it's because of the leadership in the school. So one of the things that we did, I want to say 5 years ago, sorry, the years run together, so I can't be exact. We got the State Board of Education to do actual leadership training for principals and assistant principals and really try to improve the quality of our leaders. Unfortunately, I think COVID interrupted that process, so it never got finalized. I think they had like a couple of years of getting things moving, and then COVID has interrupted it, and I don't know if the state superintendent has taken it back on, because as you can imagine, the challenges that they faced during COVID kind of put just about everything else in the back burner. But it's time to really get that started again. So having good leadership, obviously good, highly trained, qualified teachers, and then making certain that we address each school on its own merit and not trying to do a one-size-fits-all. This is not one of the things that I think state government is the best solution for finding those problems and fixing them.
And if I could follow up on that idea of mine of the housing allowance. If you rank the counties 1 through 55, and you get this information from the federal government, we know month by month what housing costs are in each one of our 55 counties. So you rank them 1 through 55, the one in the middle is number 28. What you're doing with the proposal I would have is giving some amount of extra money to every county that's above number 28. And I do think we can pick up some allies from other parts of the state by doing it that way.
Okay, great. I think you may have a follow-up. Do you have follow-up or clarification?
Do you mind a follow-up?
No, we allowed it already, so.
It's on the same topic. I'm just wondering whether you agree or disagree about the use of public money for anything that resembles a private school, such as charter schools. I'm wondering how you see that particular issue.
Well, sorry. Can
Oh,
I?
no, you go ahead.
Sure.
I don't care.
Yeah. So I definitely support public money to educate our West Virginia students, and that money is to educate West Virginia students. So whether they choose to go to private school, whether they choose to homeschool, whether they choose to do whatever that family decides is best for them, it's their money. It's the money that student, that West Virginia student, for that West Virginia taxpayer, should use whatever fits their life better. I can tell you, I know many, many stories of folks who have several children that has successfully gone through the public education system, but then had the one child who was bullied, and was bullied so badly that that child was having mental breakdowns, was crying before going to school, did not want to attend school anymore. And that parent who has multiple children doesn't have the funds to afford a private education for all their children, and not all of their children needed a different type of education option, would come and ask me, what can I do? I do not want my child to continue suffering. And this is, again, one of the many reasons for why I support the families and individuals making the decisions that fits their family best and what is best for them. So yes, I support public tax dollars going to help educate our West Virginia students.
I do not. And historically, I've been very suspicious of taxpayer money going to people to send their children to private schools or to homeschool their children. Now, and I have no opposition to any of that. I know plenty of parents who are really good at homeschooling their children. Now, this train may have left the station. So at the very least, if we're going to do this, I think we need to do two things. One, make sure that children who are taken out of public school and sent to private schools or homeschooled that we know where they are and what they're doing so that law enforcement can protect them. That is one. And I do not think our rules are tight enough now to do that. I do think we need to tighten the rules on homeschooling in private schools in order to make sure that the children are safe. Secondly, if we're going to give taxpayers for people to send money, to send their children to private schools or homeschool them, it should only go to those people who cannot afford to do it anyway. That I believe very strongly about. So there are those two things that like I say, I think we're going to, many states have done this now. While I have historically been philosophically opposed to it, my fallback position is if we're going to do it, we at least have to make sure that the money only goes to people who have difficulty affording it, and also that the kids are protected.
So just to follow up real quick with that and to give you my opinion of it. So I do want to point out that when you are choosing to discriminate against someone because of what they chose was best for their family, you are picking a winner or a loser. You are saying, well, we're going to help you, but we're not going to help this other person. And already currently, before we ever passed school choice, as you know, many parents were already choosing private school or homeschooling, but like you said, they could afford it, right? Which means that those who are being left out, those who did not have a choice before we passed this legislation, could not afford it, would not have that opportunity, and how is that fair? And one last argument I just want to point out is when it comes to social services, when we give out money for WIC or SNAP or Medicaid services, we are not dictating to those taxpayers, those citizens of our state, you may only use that money at this one facility, or you can only shop in this one store. When it comes to education, why should it be any different? When the legislature, way before I ever got there, passed the Promise Scholarship, they didn't make it where the Promise Scholarship funds could only be used in public higher ed institutions. It could also be used in private higher ed institutions. So they are allowed the choice there when it came to the Promise Scholarship. So to me, this is extension of that same philosophy.
You are absolutely correct about the Promise Scholarship, and I opposed that. I favored the Promise Scholarship, but I thought it should be restricted to only the public colleges and universities in West Virginia, as many other states did with those kinds of things. Secondly, they don't let me have SNAP money. I make too much money for that. I think that the purpose of the public schools, and I think this is one of the great geniuses of our country, when we came up with the public school system in the early part of the 19th century, the idea was that it was the responsibility of the taxpayers to make sure that everyone is educated, because all of society benefits from an educated population. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington both believed that the purpose of education was to train people to be citizens. You know, I think to now say, oh, if anybody wants to opt out of public education, we'll let you pay for your private education, goes a long way toward dismantling this system of public education that I think has made our country the greatest nation on earth.
Well, I will point out that having school choice has not hurt any of the public schools in states where there has been school choice for many, 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 many years. And we are not fully funding that private school. Just the education dollars that would belong to that student from the state is following that child. Very often, the families are still going to have to make up the difference, because that amount of money is not going to be enough for standard private education, at least in our area. Maybe in some parts of the state you can. But again, if the goal is to make certain that everyone gets a good education, I 100% agree with that, and I think we absolutely support having every West Virginia child get the best education they can get. And that includes public, private, homeschooling, and all the other options, whatever they feel that they can most benefit from.
I think you can see that Senator Rucker and I clearly disagree on this issue. Whose turn is it now to select?
I lost count.
Oh, I think it's your turn.
My turn? Okay, well, let's go in the back over there. If I tell them.
Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. So my name is Zach Collin, and I live in Shenandoah, Harpers Ferry. So we kind of talked about it a little bit in terms of kind of of kind of the free market and kind of regulation and things like that. So my question is kind of two-pronged. It's the same, but it's going to be worded differently per candidate. So for former Delegate Doyle, you mentioned in your opening statement that kind of clean air and water is very important to you. So for you, I would like you just to kind of explain what you would like to see done in Charleston to kind of pursue those goals. And for you, Senator, I would like to hear what role you feel the state, and particularly the DPA, comes to in terms of environmental regulation, because I know they had it was the 5018, I think, bill, I believe did not pass, but it basically was going to allow, in my opinion at least, or in my interpretation, kind of corporations to kind of just have the say over any type of, I'm rambling, so I'm curious your thoughts on sort of regulation when it comes to the environment in the state. Sorry.
I'm going to answer both of them. It's as to the second one, I do not think that we have. There are a number of areas where I think environmental regulation in our state needs to be tighter, particularly when it comes to coal and natural gas. I think they need to be tighter. Also, to the extent that the Department of Environmental Protection wants to enforce the rules that we have, it is often unable to do so because it is understaffed. And the solution to that is greater funding so that they can hire the staff that needs to be done. You know, we have all these orphan wells around the state, thousands of them. there are something like 4 inspectors that can pay attention to them. That's not protecting the public. So.
Okay, and I'm not 100% certain I got all of your questions, so I'm going to try to do my best. But before I answer it, for those who are standing in the back, there are a few chairs available. Please feel free to come forward and find a chair. Don't want you to feel forced to stand up there. Okay, so in terms of the environment, your overall general question about what I believe the state role should be, I will tell you that I absolutely support the state having the authority and the ability to try to protect its own borders. We do have a Department of the Environment. I can't speak to it being understaffed. I actually never heard them complain that they didn't have enough, John, just so you know.
They've been told not to.
Oh, well. Okay, wasn't by me.
Oh, I know.
So I will tell you that having clean air, clean water, absolutely very important and crucial. And I've learned a lot through the years that I've served, because before I got elected, I did not have the knowledge in this particular area, and fortunately have been able to learn a lot. And John can tell you, he's come to me and pointed out things that he thinks are good ideas, and I've been able to try to incorporate them into legislation. When it comes, and that bill that you mentioned, I'm sorry, I've never heard of that, the 1518.
I believe it was 1518, where it basically would say that if I live next to a coal plant and I have my own data that shows that there is something in the soil, that bill would essentially say that my data is not valid unless it comes from the DEP.
Interesting.
Yeah, in the last session, they tried to pass that. It came from the West Virginia Manufacturers Association, and it has to do with things like individuals, volunteer monitoring, setting up these monitoring stations around. And what the West Virginia Manufacturers Association would like is that the only legal monitoring would be done by the DEP.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I suspect it didn't make it to my committee, because I have not heard of that.
It didn't make it out of the House.
Okay, so that's why I haven't heard of it. So if it's as you described, it's not something that, you know, I would probably support, but I didn't see it, so just want to be fair.
Oh, right there, in the red and black, sitting down. Right beside the person that previously asked a question.
We've talked about the 2 things I think are of the greatest importance for West Virginia. One is the miserable teacher pay that there'll never be any forward motion before teacher pay is increased, public schools strengthened. But the other thing that has not been mentioned is broadband. Back in the time of COVID, the COVID money was flying around, and the representatives in Charleston were saying, we're gonna this broadband is gonna be everywhere and decent and reliable. Does West Virginia have the broadband it deserves these days, or where did all that, or not, or where did all that money go, or was it just a rumor?
It's a
Well, we don't have the money there yet. Supposedly there is money coming from the federal government, and I think some of it's already here. It comes from federal laws like the CHIPS and Science Act, the Infrastructure Act, I think when you add those two to the Inflation Reduction Act, West Virginia is supposed to get $6 billion for infrastructure like that. Now, in times past, when we've gotten money and put it into broadband infrastructure, a lot of it's been wasted. Frontier Communications a few years ago got a whole lot of money for broadband, and they just basically didn't spend it. And there was some, I think the state had to turn back to the federal government. We need to have a system whereby the money actually goes where it's supposed to go. And I have hopes that the next governor will make sure that happens, because the current governor has not made sure that happens.
So I agree with him. We did put in a substantial amount of money. I can't remember the dollar figure, but it was millions of dollars. Do we have the broadband we deserve? No. Part of it is going to come with the population, right? So West Virginia, most areas of the state are suffering population loss. It's going to be very hard to compete for those folks that can bring us good broadband, good internet. But I will tell you that we definitely still have that intent to be able to ensure that there is access everywhere in the state. And it's just going to take time. We have a difficult topography, and a lot of folks in rural areas that are really far apart. And in some of those places, it may make more sense to just do Starlink rather than actual, the infrastructure and all that. But we definitely still have that intent.
Okay. Whose turn?
There's a lady in the very back over there.
Hi, I'm Terry Tucker, and I live in Shepherdstown. This is back to the education questions that were discussed earlier. We've been discussing about increasing West Virginia teacher pay, but in addition to that, I would like to say that those counties that have 11, 12 students per class, as opposed to areas of greater population like ours, where there can be I think you mentioned 30 pupils per class or more. Well, why not hire more teachers? We need to pay teachers more, and we need to put more money in our budget to hire more teachers, not administrators. We have plenty of administrators. They're all well paid, and there are lots of them. And my question is, why can't we hire more teachers?
So that's an excellent question, and I 100% agree with you in terms of the administrators. So just so you know, we do fund those teachers. So they're just not enough teachers. But the money is there to hire those teachers, and the teachers and the funding formula, which, by the way, not a huge fan of the funding formula. I actually tried to change it, and it fell apart on me. It's very complicated. Very few people in the state truly know it and understand it. But the money is there, and it's a certain number per pupil, money for teacher and for aides. And that pupil enrollment really is how they determine a lot of the different things that the schools receive. But if there isn't enough teachers applying for the job, enough teachers interested, and so that's why we talk about salary so much, because increasing the salary, we certainly hope will increase the number of teachers applying, and hopefully increase the number of folks who want to teach. I do want to point out, we also passed alternative certification to encourage folks to have a degree, a bachelor's, to consider teaching and have an expedited process to be certified so that they can be a certified teacher, and that be one of the many ways we can try to solve the teacher crisis that we have. But thank you for your question.
I think the money is not there. I know that officially it's there, but the problem is the salaries are so low, we've hired all the people who are willing to teach. If we want to get more people to fill those slots, the salaries have to be higher.
Which
so
we
again,
agree on.
we're just going to have to be able to come up with more money to pay teachers, particularly here, in order to get them to teach here. Right here.
John Breslin in Shepherdstown. 90% of the electricity in West Virginia is generated from coal. Would you support eliminating coal as a way to generate electricity? And if so, how would you replace it?
I think we need to keep moving as fast as we can toward renewable energy. Yeah, I don't think you can say, like tomorrow, shut coal down and that's it. It needs to be a gradual process. Perhaps many of you saw in the news today that today is the last day that Great Britain is using any coal. They shut down their last coal-fired power plant. But it was a long process that they began. So I think we have to do that. I think coal has had its day. in terms of its role in the economy. I do think it will, for a long time, you will still need a certain amount of metallurgical coal in order to make steel. But I think in terms of heating your house, I think coal's days are pretty close to being over. And I think we need to hasten that project, hasten that process as much as we can, but at the same time, making sure we find alternative jobs for any miners that might be laid off. And there are a number of other types of jobs like that we can find for them to do. The state of Kentucky has done a fantastic job of finding alternative jobs for coal miners that are going out of work. West Virginia needs to look at Kentucky and come up with a plan that's I think, similar to theirs.
Well, we have done a lot more work training, and as you know, West Virginia Invest is to a large degree helping with that need. But in terms of coal, I can tell you I've always supported all and above energy options, but I do believe in an equal playing field. I do not want to see us picking winners and losers as a government. They all need to compete and be able to compete. Do want to point out that there is nothing that is going to give us the reliability of coal and I'm trying to think of the right word, the affordability of coal at this point in terms of generating electricity. So when we look at moving towards anything else, we have to understand what that means. It means that the price will go up and the reliability will not be able to match it. So that's always part of what our job is as legislators, is to look at all of the different options that we have and make certain that at the end of the day, we're making certain folks can afford their electricity and that they have reliable electricity to live their lives and for their jobs.
I do disagree about affordability in coal. 30 years ago, coal was the most affordable way to heat your house. But it is because West Virginia is so dependent on coal for our electricity that our electric utility rates have now gone from being some of the lowest in the country 30 years ago to being very close to being the highest in the country now. In fact, I think West Virginia has seen the greatest rate of increase in electric utility rates of any state in the union. And I think it is because we're clinging to coal.
Well, some of that is also because our electric producing companies are going into alternative forms of electricity, John, just so you know. So
but not as much as they are in other states, and our rates here are still going up.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we disagree.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
And it's your turn.
Oh, goodness. This is too hard. Okay, we'll go with this lady over here. Thank you all for the great questions, by the way.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Thomas. I live in Shepherdstown, and this question is really on behalf of all the amazing young people who are here. What would you say to them, like why should they stay in West Virginia, and what are you going to do to make a brighter future for them?
Because we're at rock bottom now, and we're going to start up, and 20 years from now, you're going to see West Virginia that has an economy where the per capita income is at the national average. We no longer will have the poorest people in the country. We won't have the highest child poverty rate. We won't have the unhealthiest people in the country. Our health statistics will be at the national average. I really do believe that we're at a point now where it's going to be nothing but up from here on.
Well, I was going to answer a little more positively than that. I will tell you that
I think that's pretty positive.
Okay, I have to tell you, I mean, I love West Virginia, and I hope all of you do too. This is a beautiful place to live, and you have wonderful people. And yes, we do have challenges, many of them, but in West Virginia, we unite to face those challenges, and we work together to get those challenges done. So if you look at other states in comparison to our state, in the state of West Virginia, if you have a problem, you have folks that are willing to step up and help you face that problem. And the community, every single time there's a fire, you see the folks in the community all gather together to help that family, wrap their arms around that family that's struggling. We truly do care for each other. And to me, this is what makes West Virginia the unique and beautiful and wonderful place. We may have challenges, but together we overcome those challenges. So I cannot make promises that I cannot fulfill, right? So first of all, I'm not running for governor. I do have high hopes for the next governor, but I could tell you that there are many pieces of legislation I wish would pass and don't make it through the process, but we have been making progress, and that's the point. We keep striving, we keep pushing, we keep trying to get better, and the fact that all of you guys are here, and there's 1,000 other things you could be doing on a Tuesday night, I mean, that tells you all we need to know. West Virginia is a rising star. God bless all of you for taking the time to be here and to care enough to be involved and to make an educated decision, because you are the future. And thank you for that excellent question.
All right, so we will be moving to closing statements, and Mr. Doyle, you will go first.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate that you thought enough about this race to want to come and learn about it and give us your ideas about it. I am going to talk about one issue that I thought might come up, but which didn't. There's been a proposal, the current governor made a proposal 3 or 4 years ago to do away completely with the state income tax. I think that would be the height of folly. The personal income tax brings in a full 40% of the state's general revenue fund. If you eliminate that, where are you going to get the money? There are about a half a dozen states that have no income tax. Every single one of them has real estate property taxes that are through the roof, triple or quadruple what we pay here in West Virginia. I do not think we could do away with the income tax without tripling the real estate property tax. And I think if you ask West Virginians, would you prefer to keep the income tax as it is and keep your property tax as low as it is, or do away with the income tax and triple your property tax? I think there's no question the vast majority would say, no, let's keep the income tax to keep property taxes down. I ask for your vote. I served for 26 years in the House of Delegates. I also served for 3 years as Deputy Secretary of Revenue. I do understand something about how tax policy works, and I want to listen to you. If I'm elected, I will do what I did before as a legislator. I will have regular town hall meetings and invite everybody to come. So please come and give me your opinions. Once again, thank you all for coming.
So once again, like John said, thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking the time. I can tell you it has been just an absolute honor to hear your questions, to hear how invested you are in our area and in making things better. I'm very grateful to be serving you. I hope to be able to continue serving you. I think anybody who has followed me in this last 8 years, they know I'm someone that you can approach about anything. I will listen to you. I don't care what party you belong to. I don't care where you live. I will be happy to hear your suggestions and ideas. Many of the ideas that I come up with for legislation comes directly from hearing from you. And I will tell you that I do so because I believe that together we all will make West Virginia better, that we all want things to be better. I don't think I am the owner of all good ideas. I am just a conduit to help make those good ideas get through the legislature. So I support and encourage all of you to please vote, and please get your friends and family to vote. This is a very important election. And thank you, John, for this wonderful opportunity.
You're welcome, and thank you.
All right. Thank you both and all of our audience for joining us this evening for this West Virginia State Senate District 16 candidate debate. And aren't we lucky that we have two candidates who are willing to be on stage with us tonight? So if you joined us tonight either online or on the radio and wish you had been here in person, you do have another opportunity to do just that. Senator Rucker and Mr. Doyle will be meeting again on stage and on the radio on Tuesday, October 15th at 7 o'clock in the Musselman High School's LGI room. And that event will also be broadcast live via the West Virginia Radio Corporation and WEPM and WCST. More information can be found about that program on our website, which is stubblefieldinstitute.org. If you're looking for another opportunity to learn more about the candidates in the upcoming election, you can join us back here in the Storer Ballroom on Thursday, yes, just 2 days away, for our second For Students by Students Town Hall. This time around, we have candidates for House Districts 97 through 100 and Jefferson County Commission, and they will be joining us to answer questions posed by students, and we also have students moderating those conversations. And so while this event is organized for students by students, it is open to the community. We'll kick off that evening with House Districts 98 and 99 at 5 o'clock, Districts 97 and 100 at 5:45, Jefferson County Commission seats for Shepherdstown and Harpers Ferry at 6:45, followed by Charlestown and Middleway candidates at 7:15. More information about that program can also be found on our website. And so on behalf of the Stubblefield Institute and Shepherd University, I thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a safe travel to your next destination.
Sure.